better, April?
We ready?
10 seconds.
10 seconds, okay. Thank you. Welcome everybody to the May 9th City of Parker Planning Committee meeting. Terry, can I ask you to do our invocation?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you've so graciously given us. We pray tonight that you might offer us the wisdom to do and make the decisions that are right for this community. We ask these things in Jesus' name.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
And it is sunset.
Jamie, can you do the roll call, please?
Ms. Hutto.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Robichaud.
Here.
Mr. Stryker.
Yes.
Chairman Riga.
Here, thank you. Everybody get a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
It was an extensive one. Thank
It
you,
was.
Jamie, for putting that together. It was very complete. Any changes, recommendations, thoughts before we vote on the approval of the minutes? Okay. Somebody want to make a motion that we approve them then?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes.
All right. Very good.
Ms. Hutto.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud.
Yes.
Mr. Stryker.
Yes.
Chairman Riga.
Yes, thank you. And nice job too. That's very extensive.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, feel free to come up to the podium and please state your name and address for any item that you'd like to bring before these commissioners. This would be anything that's not on the two agenda items that we are going to be talking about directly after the items from the audience. Yes, sir. Feel free.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Dave Whaley, and I am relatively new to Parker. I've only been here about a little less than 2 years.
Sir, what is your address? I'm sorry. Your address.
Okay, sorry, 45 West Cooper.
Thank you.
I'm also a military officer in the reserves. I've spent 2 years out of the last 5 in Afghanistan and the Middle East.
Thanks for your service.
You're very welcome. But I'm happy to be here in Parker, and I want to partner with the city on projects moving forward. I think, and you may have seen what I've done so far. I bought that last street before the bridge, West Cooper there, and then it comes around and U-shapes up Wood. And as you all know, that was the biggest eyesore in all of Parker for many years. The mayor told me that it hasn't looked this good in 35 years. It now has palm trees and landscaping and rocks, and I just put in a 160-foot dock. By the way, if you're in the market for a dock, go by and check this one out because it has the flow-through technology that's supposed to save it from a hurricane. So it's pretty cool. But that's all going well. The reason that I wanted to address the committee today is I am purchasing a lot from Jack, the owner of Royal Thai, and it's kind of catty-cornered behind Royal Thai, excuse me. Thanks for the survey.
Sure, thank you.
And it's catty-cornered kind of behind there, and I'm not sure if Jack had brought these plans to the committee to look at, but as you know, the Asian community, they live multi-generational in the same house. So he has this set of plans drawn that is one structure, and yet it is he was planning to house several generations. And I'm happy to build this structure on there if I want to be a good partner with the city, and we can certainly rent rooms individually to the airmen and to the contractors. But what it seems like to me, after looking at it, that knowing that we need an increase in density, that this lot might be a candidate for that. It's directly behind a commercial property, which is Prestige Barbershop, and then Royal Ties on the corner. And directly across the street is a triplex. And it's currently zoned for single-family residential. There's a flip house for sale next door, and then I think the second house next door is for sale, and then the one across the street is torn down to the studs. It's being redone. And I think that would maybe be a better use of the property to have multiple families, as the mayor says, every time a toilet flushes, the city of Parker does well. So my thought was that before I draw up site plans and sketches and bring them in, I kind of wanted to just get the feel, because I know Jamie mentioned that the LDRs have just been recently redone, and there's not a whole lot of appetite for revisiting that. But just given what I stated earlier, before I go down that road, I kind of wanted to just get a feel from the committee as to what the thoughts are. I think facing the front, I'm looking at 16-foot wide units. That would give us plenty of room for threeplex on the front, or if we turned it on its side, certainly 4 or 5 units would be easily done. So I'm happy to pass around these plans as well. These are the ones that Jack had that I think he showed. They're dated 21, so
Dave, a couple of questions if I might.
Sure.
So how big is so you would own lot 16, 17, and lot 1? I'm looking at your survey right here.
no, sir, just lot 17.
Lot 17, how big is that right now?
So you can see.
I just
bring my
haven't done.
glasses. It's I think it's 65 feet across the front and 130 feet.
65 by 130. 65 by 130.
It's an average lot.
Yeah, okay, so are we, so we're looking at what,
What's the
Jim,
current zone?
just a
What
hair
was
over,
current
hair
land
over an
use?
acre?
Is it
Acre?
is it in residential or?
Yeah, it's
Yes,
single,
sir.
it's
Okay,
So
residential.
it's really talking about a land use change
Yeah,
first.
Right.
so you've got a headwind.
8,450 square feet.
84, 8450.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, is that math right? 8,450, okay, okay.
65.
Yeah,
times
it
one.
would require to go to an MU1, because right now, the way that the single-family residential lots are, those are low density by nature and design. You could build one structure, one home on up to 7,500 square feet. Now, there's a couple of options, though. One would be to put together a concept where we would then migrate it to MU1, and then you could have, what, Paul, 15?
15 units
If
per
it was
acre.
successful,
Yeah.
it could go to 15 residential dwellings on
An acre.
an acre, so being
But you
84.
would have to have minimum lot sizes and whatnot.
Yeah.
which
Right,
would
right,
still be
right.
5,000 square
So
feet.
8450, is that math right?
65 times 130 is 8,450.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's kind of, it's small.
Mr. Chair, this, while I appreciate
Yeah.
the fellow getting it to the city,
Yeah.
this really isn't the forum. You all are not.
Well, he did come to the, when the mayor and the commissioners, and we told him that he has an opportunity for to come and talk to this group. And this, he's just wanting a couple of ideas, and this is good. I mean, it's good ideas. Please, Paul.
So, I mean, one of the things, it's really hard to just look at this and understand. I mean, so a presentation where you're showing, here's what's all the other stuff in the neighborhood, the other areas, et cetera. Here's what, it gives us a better idea as to whether or not it is possible. But it's just kind of hard to, with what is presented, to be able to say. But as Mark said, it is definitely contrary to the LDR right now. So there would be
Yes, sir.
there would be some heavy lifting too.
And he knows that. In order to build larger, were you considering purchasing either lot on either side of that, Dave, or?
Well, I had possibly considered the flip.
Okay.
The lot 1 is the barber shop, and I wasn't considering the commercial property there.
I got you.
If it's 5,000 square feet for one, though, minimum, he's below it.
Yeah.
You'd have to have 10,000 square feet for two houses, for a duplex,
For a duplex.
and you're at 8450,
Okay.
according to that.
And you can't have a duplex in a residential.
No,
Yeah.
so
Single-
you'd
it'd
have
have
to
to go
apply
to
for a
MU1,
variance for a
right?
duplex if he
Right.
had 10,000 square foot.
Right.
Yeah.
And the concept is kind of a seaside village,
That was my concept. You know,
Yeah.
3 adjoining units that kind of look. You know, you pull in the front, and you have a yard out back.
So, Mr. Sloan, what would be the appropriate way for Dave to approach this thing if he would, what would he need to do in order to come back here?
The first thing I think he would need to do is, if he is looking to build more than one structure on that, he would probably need a land use change, and that would be to whatever land use category he would want to apply for. And then, depending upon the outcome of the land use change, which he would bear the burden of demonstrating that there is, that he's entitled to the land use change, then if and when he submitted a development permit application, he's going to have to meet the LDR requirements of minimum lot size and things that, right now, he'd have difficulty independent of the land use category.
Meeting, right?
So on 8,450 square feet, and if he was successful in getting it migrated to an MU1,
It'd be 5,000.
okay, and so the 5,000 square feet, and how many, it's per dwelling?
Yep.
5,000 per dwelling.
Per dwelling. Yeah, the problem is it's a small parcel of land, and that might be somewhat of a showstopper there, unless the council members were willing to issue a variance.
Yes, sir. So, and that's the reason I'm here, just to kind of take the temperature of the community. Directly across the street is a triplex that faces this property, and there's a single wide, and on the street, there's houses in various,
Don't
states
those
of.
predate the LDR, Jim?
They do, yep.
I would recommend, you know, if I may,
Yeah.
I would recommend that, I mean, what you're looking for is just some advice. This is not you're not looking for an approval. So I think it would be helpful for at least myself if you had, okay, here's a bigger picture of here's what's here, you know, some topographicals and just, or satellite images to give a better picture and we could chew on as whether it might have some interest or not. But and again, you have to remember that anything that, like any opinions that we express do not constitute
Sure.
an approval.
Sure. Totally understand.
Okay. What is your address though? The other place I wanted to come and look at your dog.
Sure, absolutely. 45 West Cooper. So right before you get on the bridge, the last road to your right.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah,
All right. Thanks.
came out really cool.
Is it the pink one? It's salmon-y color, that down there,
The
by the salmon-colored home?
well, it's kind of orange, but
That
yes.
one, yeah. It's beautiful.
So if he was successful in getting this to an MU1, he could put 15 dwelling units per acre, but each dwelling unit would have to be at least 5,000, is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes, sir.
So
Okay,
that still only allows them one unit.
very good.
It's
Probably a
1/5 of
minimum.
an acre, a little shy
Yep.
of a fifth of an acre by a
Yep.
property appraiser.
Yeah, 43,560 square feet per acre. We have a conundrum, because we'd like to help you, but it's one of these deals where it's such a small parcel of land, and it is low-density residential right now. I think that there's a possibility that the council members might see migrating that to an MU1, but I don't see how it would really help because of the size of the property.
Understood.
Right now, you can build a single-family dwelling on it, but even if you migrated it to MU1, you could still only build one property on it, one dwelling unit on it. The concept there is, you know, to is to maintain, you know, either low-density residential housing or have a larger parcel of land so that you could actually migrate to, you know, multiple use, multiple units, multiple dwellings. I might suggest contacting some of the council members, seeing what they feel can be done.
Okay.
Or another option then would be, you know, if any of those other parcels of land were nearby that could be acquired, either lot 16 or anything else. I'm not familiar with that direct area there, but that might be an option for you as well.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for.
Or, you know, we'll keep mulling it over. It's not dead in the water. We're an advisory committee here, Dave. The council members are who ultimately make the final decisions. But maybe put together like a rough plan, something like, you know, Seaside Village sounds kind of nice.
Mhm.
And it might be something that's appealing to them.
Yes, sir.
That area definitely needs to be improved.
Yes, sir.
So any developer that we've got in the city of Parker that's willing to make improvements like that, I think they would welcome it, but then it's also got to somehow fit into these darn rules, so.
Yes, sir. All right, thank you for
Appreciate
your
your
time.
time, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Pat Fosick, 1344 Stratford. I have a question, and I don't know if it's appropriate for the Planning Commission or for the City Council, but in light of the discussion that we had at the last Planning Commission meeting with regard to the building that Mr. Santoro wants to put in, and Anchor's analysis and recommendation, that seems, I don't mean to be judgmental, but it seems inconsistent with the LDRs, the comprehensive plan, the CRA. I know it was mentioned by the Planning Commission members. I don't recall it being said by the council members. I don't even think they looked really at the detail. But is there an appropriate process, or is there a plan to consult with Anchor to talk about that?
What I think
And maybe
Anchor-
I'll just say,
Yeah,
I myself, I would like to see the Planning Commission do that rather than put anybody on the spot,
Oh, no,
because
no,
it
no.
really seems
let me tell you
out
what
in
the
left
process, and
field.
maybe it'll kind of help you.
That
So-
would help, because I can't find out what the process is. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you. So what happens is when a plan like that is submitted, it does go to Anchor, and Anchor vets it based on engineering things.
Exactly.
Does it meet the number of parking spaces? Does it meet the LDRs with regard to height, weight, size, limitations, all of those things? And they give us a list then that states it meets these things, these criteria, and it fails with regard to the LDR in these other criteria. And so that's what the Planning Commission gets. It's also what the council members get. But the council members have the ability to go ahead and make decisions based on other criteria. They have a little bit more flexibility than we do. Our goal here is to make sure that each of the rules meet the requirements of the LDRs. And then again, we're only an advisory committee here. Jamie records everything that goes on here, all the questions, all the discussions that occur, and then they get copies of that, and they can preview those before their council meetings. But Anchor really, theirs is an engineering concept. It's really based on, does it meet all the requirements of the LDRs? And they will state it meets these and it doesn't meet these, especially if it's going to be a major development.
Can I comment?
Please do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand all that, and that makes sense, but their report said, commercial, don't see a problem, these parcels are general commercial, MU1, residential, everything should be hunky-dory. So to me, they're interpreting the LDR, comprehensive plan, and the CRA, not engineering specs, because that's what I would expect. So that's my question. Did they overstep incorrectly?
Well, actually, it is commercial against the street, and that's the
Right.
comment that they made. And then they did identify that the two additional areas were residential beyond that. So when they do look at that, they say, if indeed this project goes forward they would have to overcome these burdens. They do make those statements.
Okay. And is that normally in the report that was provided in the packet for the planning commission at the last meeting?
It is often in the packet that we receive. It's in the packet we have tonight, for example.
Exactly, I saw
Yes.
that. It's a different document, that's why I'm asking.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for
Appreciate
indulging me.
it. Anybody else? Yes, sir, please.
Hi, Dwayne Christie. I live at 4803 Sunset Drive.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, so I've got a couple of questions here after a few issues I ran into over the last 2 weeks. I'm not sure if the Planning Commission is where I should start with this, but I figured it'd be the best place to ask some questions because my understanding is it's tied to the LDR, and that is debris pickup. I was told that, the LDR says you have to do this, this, and this. I've searched the LDR. I cannot find it in there anywhere. I found a small section on the website under debris pickup.
Debris pickup's not in the LDRs.
Okay, so I was given incorrect information there, and that's
Yeah.
part of the issue I've got because I've been given multiple information from the code enforcement officer, Public Works,
What's
and
the
it's
question,
all.
Dwayne? I mean, what are you?
Well, essentially, I had removed some stuff from my yard and placed it across the street, and for debris pickup, and it's my mother-in-law's property, so it wasn't a problem. I had some friends helping me do it, but somebody called and complained, said that I had a contractor dumping debris, which was not the case.
Okay.
The code enforcement officer came to speak with me. I explained the situation to him, talked to him, and he told me, well, you can do this or you can do this. But then I find out that the information he gave me was incorrect. I couldn't do this, and I actually couldn't do that either. But I find that out when he sends a letter to my mother-in-law stating she's about to start getting fined. And so then I get a call this morning from him stating that I can be taken to court if I don't resolve this. Now, it's only been 2.5 weeks since I did this. We're not talking something that's been sitting there for 3 months.
And I'm sorry that it seems like an unfriendly situation that you've dealt with. So was there a lot of debris?
There's a decent amount. It needs
So-
to, and I agreed that
So
I
what
would
are
pay
we,
to pick
what
it
are we
up.
allowed? We're allowed 4 by 4 by 6, is
Yes,
that
sir.
it?
On a weekly
Yes.
basis. He has worked it out with.
Yeah,
Public
I've worked
Works.
it out
Public
with the
Works is gonna
city.
come out and pick
Okay,
it up.
and where
Yes.
could he get the rule? Because I've seen it when it used to be,
It's
we'd
an
get the
ordinance.
monthly
And
letters.
We give it when they start their account as well.
I got you,
Yeah.
okay. Is there a
Chapter
written document
66.
that they can actually get a copy of this?
It is on the
Yes.
website. If you
Okay.
look hard enough, you can find it. I did find it earlier.
We're
but-
trying to enhance people's computer skills. They do that intentionally.
I understand.
And I'm sorry, it's hard to find.
It's impossible.
That young lady in the back has done a really good job of just putting together this website for us, and it's still got some ways to go, but it's a whole lot better than it has been,
Well,
so.
and when I went to try to reach out to the code enforcement officer, the website lists Jim Talley, who was the code enforcement
He's no longer
officer
here,
when
yeah.
I was the planning commissioner,
Yeah,
chairman.
I gotcha.
That's been a long time, so
Yeah,
that doesn't
Right.
help.
Well, he
How many
just left.
lots do y'all have there? You have more than one.
We own 5 lots in that neighborhood, yes.
There's a few issues. It's
Yes.
at a lot that doesn't have a water account. We only pick up at lots that have water accounts.
okay.
Okay.
And so there was a few issues, but I think he's worked it all out with.
Yeah,
Mr.
I've
Chairman.
worked it out, but
Okay.
A, I
And it
hadn't
was
been
his debris
told
on
that.
somebody else's property, even
Yes.
though
My-
they're related.
Oh,
Yes.
I see,
On my
okay.
mother-in-law's
Yeah, yeah.
property, yes.
Yeah, we just met today. actually.
Yes, we did, and you were very helpful, and I appreciate that. But then also, if I'm correct, if somebody files a complaint against you, it's not anonymous in the city of Parker anymore, is that correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Is that right?
That
It's-
is
They do
correct.
not accept
Okay.
anonymous complaints anymore.
Okay, so then when I asked and was told nobody complained, but several.
But you, wait.
That's what I thought. You could have come and talked to me.
Well,
I'm
hold
sorry,
up, hold
but-
up.
But I
Yeah,
don't wanna, I
that's-
don't wanna get into this. Look,
Yeah, that-
I'm
yeah.
talking with them right now.
Yeah, okay.
When Kyle show up on the road, on an empty lot, I gave it 2 weeks before I said anything to anybody.
That's not true. They showed up
Wait a
the
minute.
day.
Well,
we-
hey, listen,
But
we'll,
that's-
Yeah, it wasn't
direct
me.
it towards us, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why I was,
Okay.
I wasn't trying to get into a
It's, okay,
blame
so,
contest. But the code enforcement officer lied to me and told me nobody complained. So I have an issue with that.
Well, he's a
I don't
new
know how much
guy,
you
and
wanna
it's
get into this
possible
one.
that, yeah. Say,
I think he spoke with you way before Ms. Gibson called.
yeah, so,
And that could be the case, I don't know.
and at the end of the day,
Well, like I said, I've got
was
it resolved, but, you know, the idea that in a matter of 2 weeks, I'm getting calls telling me I'm gonna be taken to court if I don't resolve this issue, which,
And that's unfortunate. It shouldn't happen. Bedside manner is important,
yeah,
and
I would be perfectly
it
happy if
probably
somebody would
should
come and
be
talk to me.
a
And that's why I
little bit,
came up here
you
to talk to
yeah.
you.
And I appreciate that, Dwayne.
Yes, Mr. Palmer.
Paul?
May I make a comment on that?
Yes.
So we've had turnover in that department, and
Quite a bit of
and,
time.
yeah, and then I do know that Mr. Libby had put together a set of procedures, with timelines and everything, and Darren was trying to follow those procedures. But I think what I'm really hearing is we need to do a better job of formalizing the procedures, the timelines, and then also post them on the web, because that's where you were looking for a solution. And I think that would take care of.
Well,
of
yeah,
your
because I
concern.
was like, what are the timelines?
Good
I mean, I was
suggestion.
never actually cited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked to the guy, told him what I was trying to do, and then,
It usually starts as just as a warning, like, hey,
We have to
you've
give
got too
them-
much debris, or it's too much, or
What's your plan?
we can come and pick you up, or
Mr.
what's the
Chairman, point
plan,
of
or
order,
something like
this is
that.
totally out of the realm of the planning commission and the meeting that we're supposed to be having tonight. We're 26 minutes into this, we're gonna have a very long meeting.
Right.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Dwayne, so it's unfortunate that, thanks for keeping us in check.
Well, and that's why I
It's
was asking. I
unfortunate
didn't
that
know if it was in
no,
the
it's
LDR
unfortunate
or
that
not, so.
happened. And I appreciate you bringing up the neighborhood and building a beautiful home and all that stuff. I'm familiar with your property now. I think it sounds like you know what the rules are now. Sounds like you know the size and the type of debris that we can remove. With that, I think you know who our clerk is.
Yes.
We have a couple of new employees based on people who left, so people are probably feeling their way. At the end of the day, it's easy to get our feelings hurt sometimes because sometimes local government can be cold and here's the rules and you have to abide. But at the end of the day, it's really, they're looking at a rule book and then they're applying it. So with that, I would just suggest that, you get to know some of the people who are here and feel free to air your concerns in the future. At this point, we're going to go ahead and cut it off though,
Yep,
Dwayne,
that's
because
fine.
we have a couple of developments we have to get to.
Not a problem. Like I said, I didn't know if this was the right place or not, but when they said LDR.
Hey, you're a citizen of Parker. We're citizens of Parker. We enjoy hearing what you have to say. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is a quasi judicial review that's going to be occurring tonight. So anyone that does come to the podium, both those people who are representing Librisa or others that have an interest in discussing anything about this will have to be sworn in. With that, what we have today are two developments that we're going to be discussing. One has to do with it's a major development for the purpose of repairs or rebuild of the Librista Inn. And then one of our commissioners is going to be making some recommendations in terms of how we might amend the comprehensive plan. So with that, does somebody from Librista have anybody that could come up? Very good, thank you. Please state your name and
Kishan Patel on behalf of Rudra P. Inc. for Librisa Inn.
hey Keishan, nice to meet you.
You as well. Good afternoon, members. Thank you all for having us here today.
Thanks
Do I need to
you.
swear him in now, sir?
Yes, please.
If you'll raise your right hand. But he is an attorney, though. Do I still swear?
Are you gonna be testifying in any way, shape, or form, or you're just presenting?
Just presenting, but I'm happy to
Yep.
swear in if necessary.
Well, go ahead.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm the statement you are about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Keishan. So if you don't mind, just sort of give us a little history. I think we're all familiar that that was a lodging facility at one time. We had an awful hurricane that did some significant damage to it. Sounds like the owners of the property now wish to rebuild it. If you don't mind giving us a little history and then also giving us a future, what your intentions are to rebuild it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Rega, for the opportunity.
It's our pleasure.
So,
Thank you.
to give you a brief overcap, this was formerly the Labrisa Inn, which is owned by Rudra P. Inc., which I have the ownership group here present. And through the hurricanes over the last few years, there has been extensive damages that have occurred. Anyone who's had to deal with insurance over the last few years knows how difficult it has been, not just for residential properties, but for commercial properties as well. The ownership group at this point in time has spent the last year and a half preparing a future plan for this particular site.
Keyshawn, can I interrupt and just ask
Please.
questions, because you said something, and one of
Yes,
my
sir.
questions was, it's been 4 years, so did the family struggle with getting insurance reimbursement? Is that the reason for the delay in the rebuild?
That is one of the few factors
Okay.
that delayed. So there was an insurance timeline delay, and then there was also a secondary delay, which we account for financing. Of course, financing a hotel over the course of the last 4 or 5 years has been incredibly difficult through the pandemic, as well as many other variables that have impacted financing contingencies.
Very good.
So the plan at this point in time is to open a Choice Hotel product, which is a nationally recognized, internationally recognized franchisor, which you all may be familiar with. Comfort Inn and Suites, Quality Inns, Econo Lodges. So it's a national reputable entity in which the ownership group has signed and paid for a franchise in order to have the rights to license this property. The ownership group has put not only their land as equity, but has made extensive cash injections into this property. And right now, the equity injection is close to about $2.2 million. And over the last 8 to 10 months has been close to $300,000 to $400,000. And that's anywhere from getting the structural reports done, getting designs done, architectural designs, geotechnical reports, hiring a general contractor that specializes in hotels, the demolition of the site, security of the site. So there were a lot of costs that were put into this. Unfortunately, just a few months ago, one of the LDRs came in and was approved that would prevent this property from being developed as an exterior corridor property. It's 90 units, but the importance of this at this point in time is, one, our objective is to revitalize the community and provide a well-reputable hotel into this community so folks can have their families come into town. We can create jobs. We can create a tax benefit. I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, but the mayor said every time a toilet flushes, it's good for the county. You can imagine having 90 toilets and having a lot of visitors. We're also very familiar that here in the future there's going to be a lot of military improvements, and we want to make sure that there's enough locations to house those folks. So this is not going to be a typical independent hotel that you see kind of historically with local community members staying, but it's going to be for tourists. And with that, you can not only count on the hotel ownership to be maintaining and upkeeping this property, but the brand itself to enforce certain quality standards and quality assurance across the country. If any of you have stayed at a Choice Hotel product or any hotel of your preference, you will know that it's all about consistency. And when you stay at a hotel, if it's not a boutique hotel, they expect that a consistent stay will remain in place. So we have submitted all the plans. We're very thankful to work with the county. We worked with some of the former members in code enforcement. Big thank you to Mr. Sloan and Mrs. Jamie here for all the assistance that they have provided to the ownership group. But at this point in time, I also asked a member of the construction general contracting team to be here, who's the chief operating officer, to answer any questions that we can for you all, because we want to see this hotel being built. Financing is secured. The Trustmark Bank, Mr. Corey Proctor, is ready to close on this loan. In fact, they even provided an extension on this loan just so that way we had the opportunity to come before this board as well as next Tuesday in front of the council to get approvals. But at this point in time, once this board along with the council approves us, we're ready to put shovels in the ground. We're ready to get this project off the ground, and there's no further delays. Everything's been done. If you don't have a copy, we'd be happy to provide you a copy. And if you have any inquiries about any of those reports, I have a copy in front of me here to provide to you all for any review or clarifications.
Keyshawn, can you share with us, we know it's going to be a Choice Hotel. Do you know which one?
It's going to be the Quality Inn by Choice Hotels.
Quality Inn, thank you.
And as of July of last year, that franchise flag has been secured, has been approved, and Choice has also approved Rudra P. Inc. to open. They have been extensively involved in the review process. Yeah, and I'd be happy to pass these around so you can get a visual. I'm big on visuals. I like to see what's coming, not just hear about it. So please, let me just provide you all with some visuals here. We've got some renderings that were created for this property, in which we made for actually the lenders, so that way they could have an idea of what type of development was heading our direction.
Very good.
So this has been incredibly helpful for not just one short on a copy. If I can just have you guys share this one here.
Well, here, you can have mine.
One short.
And so you'll see in the first 3 pages there, different types of renderings. We also have videos that we'd love to share with you guys via email, but of course we didn't want to print those out for you. So again, happy to answer any of your questions, whether it's ownership, whether it's the general contractor, any aspect of this project, we'd be happy to advise on.
The building as it is, which is part of the building, are those walls even where they can be built back on? Because I mean, that thing's been standing like that for 4 years.
That is correct.
Concrete exposed, the whole schmear outside of when they had everything collapsed in on it.
Yes, ma'am. So we had MK Weber, the structural engineers, who gave us a report that did find that the building itself was sound and secure, and we can do renovations and build with the integrity of the property as is. Of course, there are some repair works that do need to be done, but the evaluation of that property as it sits is about $1.3 million. And so if we were to demolish that, we'd be working backward. We can spend a few $100,000 to repair those items that need repair, but the structural engineers have signed and certified. And the civil engineer, which is Robert Carroll, which you all may be familiar with, has been extensively involved in this project, and I believe has answered and approved on every question that was required of this committee.
So when you say, and I'm gonna ask this, maybe it'll be stupid for some people, but if it's a Quality Inn, then is it held to the standards of a Quality Inn? And I'm gonna tell you why I asked that question. The La Brisa Inn prior to 2018 was not exactly where you wanted to stay, okay? Law enforcement had nothing but issues over there, to the point that they had gone so far as to make stickers to put them on the meth room doors so that people couldn't stay in those rooms again for a while. So I say that to say, it's gotta be held to a better standard. I don't, so with it being part of a franchise, is that a different set of rules than what would be for just being mom and pop inn?
It is, and I appreciate you bringing that point up. On the very last page of the slideshow, you'll see hotel versus motel. And the La Brisa Inn would be recognized generally as a motel, but my background practice is being a hotel attorney. I'm a franchise attorney by trade, and I work extensively with brands like Choice, Wyndham, Hilton, Marriott, and I will tell you that there are incredible financial consequences for a hotel owner that has a brand of this nature that does not comply with the standards as required across the nation. Not only does this brand send qualified inspectors to this property to check as a guest undercover, but they will also financially pull the flag, and that penalty is several hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this ownership group does not want to endure that. This ownership group runs currently a Wyndham property in the city of Panama City, and they've understood that the motel versus hotel expectations are very different. We have no interest in having any type of property that would attract the type of clientele or customers that would require heavy involvement of law enforcement. This is truly going to be a family-oriented location where a family can feel safe bringing their children, bringing their parents, bringing their family members to this place.
Because
so that
the military wouldn't have put anybody in the La Brisa Inn. Not a chance.
And I can tell you right now that this renovation is not going to be a $1 million or $2 million renovation. It is going to be an $8 million hotel. And when that $8 million hotel is built, you are required to some degree to maintain that hotel and keep the rates up, right? Because when you keep rates up, you're able to kind of maintain the status of the type of clients you're attracting. We come with very extensive hotel experience, and we know the difference between a hotel and a motel, and this will not be a motel. There's going to be too much investment into this to allow it to fall to a property of that degree. And not only that, but we want to be supportive of our community. We want to create jobs. We want to create that positive financial impact for our town without the involvement of law enforcement in a negative way. Instead, we want it to be a positive viewpoint for the city where people can say, come to our town, stay, come visit our restaurants, come visit our local tourist attractions so that way we can continue to bring business into this local community.
Mr. Patel, so you're calling it a hotel. So would there be a lobby and then the rooms would be accessed directly from the internal portion of the building, or would it be something you would still drive up to the individual rooms and then the doors would be directly adjacent to the parking lot?
So the rooms will be adjacent to the parking lot, but in order to have access, you would go through the lobby for check-in. It is an exterior property as it sits.
Okay.
But of course, again, it comes with the fact that the brand itself is going to be monitoring and policing the type of quality brand standards that are being implemented. And I'll tell you, I'm not sure if you've ever had a run-in with the brand, but even when they send their inspectors, if your towels are not of certain quality, they will fine you for that, and they'll enforce that these items are improved. So this is not just a matter of the type of clientele. It comes down to whether or not there's a minor tear in the carpet, whether or not this chair has a dent in it. They will make you replace it because it is a customer experience that they want to keep consistent across the country.
Very good.
I've got a question. You're a hotel motel attorney, I'm not, so excuse me for this question,
No
okay?
worries.
I looked up Florida statutes and it said a motel is a public lodging establishment which offers rental units with an exit to the outside of each rental unit, which differentiates it from a hotel. I'm just talking Florida law.
Of course.
Clarify that for me.
Sure. So there's a legal definition of it, and then there's the practical definition of it. And the practicalness of it is when in our mind we think of a motel, we think of a local type of lodging inn, where when you go, it's purely a check-in. Here's a key. Here is your bed, your toilet, your shower. That's it. In a hotel, it's providing with plenty of different styles of amenities, having a pool, having a breakfast hall, having a lobby with a business center in it. So it's a different type of service being provided. And so while we certainly respect and understand that the legal definition of it is one thing, it's about correct. It's that practicalness of the type of services being offered. And for this hotel, the services would be a Choice Hotel standard, not a local independent inn standard.
So in this particular facility, everybody would, I'm sorry, but let me ask this, Paul, and I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. But, so you'd have a lobby, people could have breakfast there, there'd be a restaurant, at least in the morning, I'm familiar with how they generally do that, a pool, any other amenities that you'd?
Fitness center, is there a conference
Fitness
room?
center?
Fitness
Not with
center,
this one?
there usually is not a large conference center, but I do believe that this one will have meeting space to allow whether it's business entities or families to have kind of group meetings. It would probably be half the size of this room here with a conference table in it, and usually between 8 and 12 business style chairs. And then there's usually also a business center within that lobby with a computer, a printer, a chair for any business travelers that need to manage them.
Very good.
So I'm gonna segue off of that question, because that was the question I had. Then, you have the original structure there, and that's all concrete dividers between the rooms, etc. So there would be some, I'm familiar with the old La Brisa. Actually, when I first moved here, it was called Admiral Benbow, and I stayed there until my house was ready. But, so there wasn't really, you would have to change some structural components in the center there to provide this lobby and everything else, because that doesn't exist in the old hotel. Is that correct?
If I may, I'd like the general contractors team to speak on that. However, I do believe that is accurate, and from the plans that were created and the architectural design, with the independent architecture that was hired by ownership, along with Choice Hotels, have come to determine that certain modifications to the building would have to be done. But if I may, for the sake of it, I'd introduce Jay Patel, who will speak on behalf of the general contractor.
Nice to see you, sir.
Do you swear or affirm the statement you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. On the hotel plan size, when we designed this hotel, we took a holistic look at what the shape of the building is, had a hotel specialist design it in according to the guidelines, then we sent it to the brands. The brands vetted the design, came back with recommendations on where they want the lobby, where they want the breakfast area, where it's tied into the meeting space. Each of course, the safety and the securities with the card key locks, the type of windows that they want. These are all recommendations that came in. We had the architect put it together. One of the things that Attorney Kishon hadn't mentioned to you is that the loan itself is also tied to the brand. So if the brand fails, it triggers the loan into a default. And as you guys know, when you travel, our industry today, I'm in the hotel business also, we're really rated by reviews. You know, you'll get an email and your reviews speak for itself. And so those ratings, it's called LTR, likely to return. That's a question you'll always get. And the brand bases it based on the customer's feedback and the type of inspections that they do. So to assure you, having the brand and the liquidated damages could be excess from 250 to 400,000 if they lost the brand. And again, it triggers the loan. The loan goes into default, and of course that's how we maintain our industry. But the structure itself was looked at, reviewed and approved according to the local codes. We reached out to the local agencies and found out what your requirements are. The architect and the civil engineer, you guys gave us some recommendations on the drainage, water flow, and so we've made those, and I believe those were submitted. Comments have came back. We've answered all the questions. I think we're ready, I believe, at our stage, at the permit stage right now.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Mr. Patel, one of the things that, I'm sorry, Paul, go right ahead. I'm looking at my notes.
I should
Please do.
figure out which Mr. Patel.
Actually,
Construction
you're
Patel.
engineer. Go ahead, Paul. Go with your question, please.
So, are you calling this a hotel or are you calling this a motel?
Well, the industry calls it a hotel. When you have a brand name on it, a hotel.
Okay.
And most hotels versus a motel today in the 21st century are roadside mom and pop, usually 20, 30 unit hotels where mom and pops live in the hotel.
Yeah.
Franchise don't allow that. There's no apartment here that the owners will live. It will be 24-hour mandated by front desk staff and a manager, and most of the time management companies even operate these hotels.
Okay.
That was gonna be one of my
Yes,
questions,
exactly,
actually, and I
yes.
kind of deferred.
Yeah, there's
to
nobody
asking
staying
you,
at the
but
hotel,
Mom
yes.
and pop won't live at the motel, and, 'cause
That's
that was a
exactly.
bit of
Yep.
the situation prior.
It is in an area called a Community Redevelopment Act area, and as you know, you've probably built hotels there before.
Yes, sir.
When a community does put any kind of a structure in a CRA area, the community has to identify what type of structures are acceptable.
Yes, sir.
And in our CRAs, we can accept hotels.
Exactly.
We cannot accept motels.
Correct.
But more than that, there are some design standards, and your plans are very complete. But design standards are things like certain architectural styles, and I believe that this meets that requirement. Pedestrian mobility, it does request and require that you put in sidewalks and also bicycle paths.
Absolutely.
Also, it looks like your parking standards are gonna be right there,
Right
90
on the
rooms.
line, I believe.
You're really supposed to have, one per room, and I think you've got 95, plus one for every 1 to 5 employees. You're
That's
right
right,
there
yeah.
in terms of your parking space. They do indicate that they want streetscape and landscape. These CRA areas, when you go to the state and the county and you identify that this area is going to be designated as a Community Redevelopment Act area, they want it to be the best of the best. It's designed to enhance a community. So making sure that those will ultimately make it into your plans. Stormwater, I've seen you've already done the Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Yes, sir. And I believe we've
your-
also submitted a landscaping plan.
You did.
That was
You
pre-approved
did.
also.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we reviewed, what we received was the FDEP report, the application to the city. We received the new survey, the summary project report, the wind mitigation design, that was very good, very
Thank you.
educational as well. Drainage report, traffic concurrency, and impact studies, we reviewed those. I'm just making sure that if the council members will have to create a variance because their definition of a motel versus a hotel is how you access the rooms.
Of course.
However, it seems like there's one component that they may have some heartburn with, and that's gonna be the door at the end of the curb, as you walk into the room. It looks like you're doing everything else from a hotel standpoint in terms of the breakfast nooks, the lobby, 24-hour, people. That would probably you'd have to file for a variance, and they'd have to agree to it.
So just to address that, historically, up north, a lot of the properties are interior corridor. But if you go down south, if you go to Orlando, Disney, a lot of those 100, 200, 500 unit hotels are still exterior corridor.
Yeah.
because of the climate and the weather,
Yeah.
a lot of our properties, even if you go through all the way down to South Florida, a lot of hotels have exterior corridors. So it's not uncommon that we have exterior corridor hotels here on the south side versus the north side.
I did catch one thing, and you're an engineer, you say?
No, I'm a general contractor.
Oh, general
Yeah,
contractor.
yeah.
One thing I did catch in the report was it looked like you used a 25-year, 24-hour rain event
Okay.
as your standard. We have migrated in the current LDR to a 100-year, 24-hour rain event. There's only a 2-inch rain difference there.
Sure.
I did see you're putting Storm Tech in, and I think that'll probably meet the requirement of your.
That was the recommendation from the civil side.
Yeah, well, Storm Tech's
Yeah.
that's a good product and a good application. It's going to be under building, in back of building A,
Back of
is that
building A.
right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes,
I
sir.
think that would probably, but in your final report to Parker,
Okay.
it'll probably have to meet the 100-year, 24-hour rain
Gotcha.
event, just because we're paranoid about flooding. It happens here all the time. But again, 20.
No worries. We'll make
Yeah,
a
it's
note on that.
it's a 2-inch rain difference. It's 10.5 versus 13.1, something like that. in-
If we
in
need it
terms of rain.
done, this is the time to get it done.
We reviewed the curve values for your drainage report. They all look promising and good. You're entitled to up to 90% impervious. I think you're at 84, 85, so you meet that requirement.
Yes, sir.
So everything else is good, but I will warn you, one of the things you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to get the council members in order to agree to that variance.
That's our task
With
next week.
with regard to the hotel versus motel. I think some of the concerns you've got will be alleviated because it's gonna be a brand name.
Yeah.
One other thing that I might pitch at you is I think there's a certain frustration that has been there for over 4 years now.
Yes.
How quickly, if the council members agree to allow this hotel to be, to move forward, do you think it would be before you would break ground and start on a project?
So according to an order that we have previously from the county, we've got 30 days from when permits are provided to break ground.
30
and
days?
we intend to execute on that faithfully.
30 days, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I be right? now?
Please do.
I need to ask a question, Mr. Sloan.
Please do, Terry.
Are we to look at this as of the date of submittal of the application, the LDR that was in effect, or the LDR as it is now?
Well, under the LDR, it says that there's no vesting of rights until a development permit is issued. So technically, it's the one now.
Which says no motels in CRA.
Well, and the chair points out that there is some discussion in the LDR about that. There is also a difference of opinion about the definitional term, and I think that that's something the council's gonna have to weigh in on.
True.
I think
May I?
Yeah, but let me just make this comment. I think the big concern over the motel-hotel concept is something that Bev brought up, the criminal element assigned to motels. But I think if you really get down to the core, what the concern is, it sounds like they're gonna be resolving them with 24-hour on-site brand hotel.
It's legal versus conceptual
Yeah.
definition.
Absolutely, Terry. Agree with you. Please, Mr. Robichov, feel free.
It's already been brought out that the building has been vacant and disused for well beyond the 180-day limit that is imposed under LDR section 6.3.1.4, which means that this development shall be subject to compliance with the provisions of the current land development regulations. LDR section 10 maps shows the property is in the CRA, as been pointed out before, specifically sub-area 2 mixed use. The anchor view is silent on this, and the further stipulation that, as pointed out by the chairman under 4-7.5, no motels are allowed in the CRA. The approval of this development order depends on whether this is a motel or a hotel. And I'm sorry, gentlemen, Florida statutes do not agree with your interpretation of what a hotel and a motel is. Florida Statute 509-242 requires that all public lodging establishments be classified as one of only seven types: a hotel, motel, non-transient apartment, transient apartment, bed and breakfast inn, timeshare project, or vacation rental. If the establishment satisfies the following criteria: A hotel, public lodging establishment containing sleeping rooms, accommodation for 25 or more guests, providing the services generally provided by a hotel and recognized as a hotel by the community in which it is situated or by the industry. A motel, on the other hand, is any public lodging establishment which offers rental units, and this is key, with an exit to the outside of each rental unit. Daily or weekly rates, off-street parking, central office and property operating under specified hours, bathroom or connecting bathroom, at least 6 rental units, and which is recognized as a motel in the community in which it is situated or by the industry. The key distinction is the motel allows access from the street, where a hotel does not. The La Brisa Inn renovation allows outside access to each rental unit and is therefore a motel. The La Brisa renovations fails 2 other statutory tests for a hotel. I conducted a survey on one of our local Facebook pages, which is for the Parker Residents Group. I conducted it from May 5 through 9 of 2023. I asked the following question: if you remember the La Brisa Inn on Tyndall Parkway, did you consider it a hotel or a motel? Respondents were offered the choices of hotel, motel, or I don't remember. 100% of the 39 respondents said it was a motel. Since the renovations plans still meet the Florida statute's definition of a motel, it is unreasonable to assume that it will not be considered a motel by the community. Finally, there exists no recognizable state or national lodging or industry authority which classifies lodging types. There are only trade organizations which any lodging business can join for a fee. Industry recognition can't be achieved because it doesn't exist. While some hotel amenities have been added to the renovation, it still lacks the one thing that distinguishes a hotel from a motel, namely that is controlled access via an always open registration date for both guests and visitors. In my humble opinion, the minimum requirements to classify the La Brisa Inn renovation as a hotel under Florida statutes 509-242-1A and make it compliant with LDR section 4-7.5 are a change to eliminate open access from the street for all guests, a change in design to require controlled access past the 24/7 man registration desk for all guest rooms. I understand that you have that now. Part 3, condition 3 is a change in design for addition of controlled access emergency exits where required by fire and building codes for all floors. We can't choose to ignore Florida statutes.
Let me approach this thing from a different angle here. So I really read your notes. Also went ahead and looked through the existing non-conforming development. And when we look at that, if we go back to that abandonment or discontinuance, we have to go back to the cause. And the cause of the abandonment of the hotel was directly related to the storm. And there's precedent within section 711.1 that specifically identifies if specifically a result of a natural disaster, then in other areas of the LDR, they have more time.
Does it specify a time?
It specifies 6 months unless we're talking about a natural disaster. That's why I asked Mr. Patel what the reason.
Does it allow 4 years plus?
Well, it doesn't. So it's open-ended.
Yeah.
So if you, that's why I asked Mr. Patel what it was. So bear with me here, because I got a couple of other thoughts here. So if you look at item number 1, where we're talking about protection of landowner rights, existing non-conforming development, I'm in section 6.3, the same one where the abandonment or discontinuance was. If you look under the section there where it talks about continuance of non-conforming development, if in existence of the effective date of these land development regulations remain in its non-conforming state. In other words, their building had the right to remain in a non-conforming state, even if it's a motel. So if it doesn't meet the requirement of the LDR, that statement allows it to remain in a non-conforming state. That's just above public hazard. Then if we look at item number 2, they have a right to repair their building, okay? They have an engineering report which stated, I believe, that you had 33% damage, is that right? They have a bona fide engineering report that says their building was damaged at 33%. And if you look at our standard for that, it's not today's standards, it's what happened when the damage occurred. So in 2018, when the damage occurred, their engineer said it was damaged at 33%, okay? So I don't want to sound like I'm an advocate, I'm just trying to go by the rules because that's important for both of us, right?
Yes, sir.
So then if I go ahead and I take a look at the precedent, which we apply to other structures, the precedent does say that if that 6-month rule applies unless there is a natural disaster. Hurricane Michael was the 3rd worst hurricane that hit North America. So now we go to item number 5, which is under damage and destruction, and it says where other non-conforming development is substantially damaged. Goes on to
Applies
talk.
only to single-family dwellings.
Hold on now. Yeah, but you got to read beyond that. A dwelling is considered to be substantially damaged or destroyed if the cost of reconstruction is 50% or more of the fair market value structure at the time of the damage or destruction. For non-conforming development, okay, comprised of multiple structures, it goes on. So, so one of the kickouts would be, so if you look at replacement, read replacement. So even if they had to replace the building, it says nothing contained herein shall preclude an owner of a non-conforming structure from replacing the non-conforming structure with a structure of similar size in the same footprint. Now, we haven't gone there yet, if it's in the same footprint. In the same footprint and equal to or better quality, so long as the extent of the overall nonconformity of the entire property is not materially increased. In other words, the extent of the nonconformity being hotel, motel, okay, and only if the replacement complies with all other, very important adverb, all other. So in other words, it maintains its nonconformity as long as all other provisions of these land development rules are adhered to. I remember that conversation with us and the attorneys during the rewrite of this thing. So, so all other is a very important couple of little words that are stuck in there in order to protect people like these. So the nonconformity being motel, hotel is possibly a moot point as long as you do everything else to meet the requirements of the CRA. So anyway, that would be my, my take on it. And the very specific report that I saw in the news media and everywhere was that Librista had taken the time to get an independent engineer to evaluate the damage, and they showed 33% destruction. So with that in mind, there's a whole other thing that would allow them to do this. It's item number 8, change in the structure. Should a non-conforming structure be converted in whole or in part to a non-conforming structure, then the portion, so essentially, if you have a non-conforming structure, okay, if they then, they can then convert other components to conforming structures, and they still, other buildings that are still there that meet the still maintain the non-conforming structure designation. So that's my take on it, guys. I'm sorry to have to walk you through that, but that's what we all agreed to some time ago.
I'm glad you did walk through. I'm kind of a fence sitter on this one.
Well, here's what I try and get down to. At the end of the day, what are we worried about in terms of a motel? Exactly what Bev hit the nail on the head. She doesn't want our 8 or 9 police officers going to motels because those tend to be areas of crime.
We're busy at the dollar store.
These guys are gonna have a breakfast area. They're going to follow all the other CRA rules. It's a CRA sub-area 2. I'm assuming Mr. Patel, they're gonna meet all the other requirements of the CRA. They're gonna put in fantail driveways, they're gonna put in, walkways, they're gonna put in bicycle paths, they're gonna do trees and foliage. Now, you do know you reside up against another residence back there, right? So
Fence back there.
fencing, foliage, trees, and we've all been to these style hotels. They're nice. I think the
In
fear,
our experiences, we do it all over Miami, Florida, Orlando, Daytona, Jacksonville. We've done this last 4 or 5 years.
yes,
And if I may add too, that I think one of the main concerns is we don't want our police officers getting involved into a property with crime. Usually a property like that that's generally run down is a property that has an evaluation of 1 to 2 million max. This is going to be an $8 million property, so ownership group that's sitting back here is not going to allow their property to deteriorate into finding the wrong clientele and potentially default on an $8 million loan. This is not a small investment. This is a very large investment, and we're hopeful that this board, along with the city council, will recognize that the requirement from the hotel, motel, and the exterior access could dramatically impact whether or not this hotel is built. Financing is lined up, plans are done, engineering is done, civil engineering is done, architectural designs are done, the franchise is ready to open. So at this point, we're hopeful that the community as a whole will recognize that historically, while it was a motel, and there's no dispute, we can all recognize it, that this property that's going to have an $8 million cost with an evaluation that'll be even higher will be good for the county, will be good for taxes, will be good for creating jobs, and to continue to bring businesses to this local community. Because it's about making sure that the people here know that they're safe, know that they can bring their families here, and that each of us can send our family members to this location without fear or concern.
yeah.
And also the evaluation, the appraisal.
And the base commander at Tyndall just identified that there's gonna be a shortage of housing there too, so, and we need something like this. I mean, at the end of the day, I wish it was a hotel with internal corridors. I think they're safer, but I think it's a brand name, and I think all the other elements are gonna remain consistent with a hotel. There's probably gonna be some heartburn amongst the council members, but I think if you cite that 6.4, that protects you, so I gotta ask the question, is it in the same footprint as the current hotel?
Yes.
No additional square footage?
No, sir.
Okay, because that's the key.
Right.
That's the key right
You're
there.
actually losing a couple of rooms, right, for the
Yes.
addition of the other.
We've dropped
And
it
then
from
the-
94
the-
to 90 rooms.
Yeah, and then
just
the
to meet
ADA
the
compliant ones.
requirements.
Correct.
That takes.
And
up
we're
a
making the
room.
pool a smaller pool to get the additional parking spaces.
Excellent, yeah.
Where
and
does
that
the space
made
for that
sense.
lobby come from?
It's
Sorry?
Where did the space, the area for the lobby come from?
Right in the center, we took 2 rooms and then took a breakfast area, so it's like, I believe 4 bays got converted into a breakfast.
Your elevation shows an awning of some kind between the two structures?
Yeah, it's a canopy. yeah.
There's nothing under that?
No, it's a canopy for the car to pull in case it rains. We have a
There's
little
not a,
canopy.
there's not a enclosed doors kind of thing?
Yes.
It is an open canopy, there is
Yeah.
nothing there.
Correct. Yeah, it'd be kind of an open canopy to drive underneath, so that way families can go to the check-in, pull
Check-in.
their bags out, being
Okay.
under the shade. It's
Gotcha.
kind of a secure
Gotcha.
entry-exit point.
Especially for weather reasons.
Now, the part that was the residential area where the people lived, is that part of the, being incorporated in?
That's now gonna be a rentable unit.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you fellows will, I mean, CRA sub-area 2 really want that to be a pretty property.
Absolutely.
Really need those trees, really need that foliage, really need decorative fencing and all of that stuff.
We've
Good.
got a video that we'll send you that we did a fly-through video with all the landscaping and stuff, just to show you how pretty it's gonna look. So you can hold us accountable, it'll look exactly like that.
I can tell you, spending $8 million, we're not going to cut a corner on the beautification of this property.
Paul, please.
So, Jim, thank you very much for, because I told him I didn't have time to do much of this research with some personal issues that came up. So I definitely, I'm kind of a detail person. However, as Mark pointed out, Mark Rega, we do recognize that we had a catastrophe. I still have not finished re-landscaping my place after the storm. it's ready to go. So in my head, we're gonna turn something into a usable, nice looking place. We don't make the decision on the whether or not it's a hotel or a motel. But if we deny, if we say no, you can't do it, then we might be left with a piece of property for a long time. So, I mean, those are just the things to weigh. I mean, we just went through this on the Parker Baptist Church property. It's just, where do we draw the line, and what recommendation do we make? So my gut feeling is the net effect would be positive to let you go forward, acknowledging that you're in violation of the current LDR, but you also possibly fall under the particular passages that Mark Rega pointed out as far as catastrophe-related things. As far as the property being abandoned, it wasn't used, but it really wasn't abandoned. There weren't homeless people camping out in there. So,
And in fact, it wouldn't have been abandoned except for the storm. I mean, it was the abandonment occurred
Well,
because of the storm.
The storm was a blessing in itself, unfortunately, for that piece of property.
So it's gonna get nicer.
And I will say that, you know, we are
Just
fully aware.
gonna say that, because I have sat in that parking lot on stakeout with my husband and other officers. It was, for lack of a better word, a rat hole. So, we can only hope for better.
Well, we're gonna
It
get
will
better.
be better, because the $8 million property can't end up as a unit of that discretion. And the 4-year period, you know, we fully understand that this project has taken some time. However, the requirement and the due diligence that had to be done behind getting insurance proceeds, getting the brand on board, just negotiating with Choice Hotels took 5 months to get favorable terms to incentivize this ownership group to bring in a brand.
So is there a length of time that you're under contract with that, or is it now that has become kind of who's bought in? And I say that just because it won't be a Quality Inn for 5 years and then that's not the brand anymore.
I'll verify, but it's a minimum 15-year, or I believe it may even be a 20-year term.
Okay.
So it's not a very short-term period. They do give you a short period of time to actually get open and start construction. These folks have even had to pay an extension fee on breaking ground, just because, you know, obviously we're going through this process. But no, it is a 15-year term. I will double check. I do believe it is 20 years though. This contract was signed back in June or July of last year, and the brand has inquired on, you know, where are we at? What's it going to take to get this hotel up? We want to see progress being made, and of course we've been keeping them in the loop with what's happening with this LDR.
And Mr. Patel, we have to open a public hearing, but you will have the opportunity, so we're gonna give the audience a chance to come up and state whatever was on their mind.
Absolutely.
And then you would have the opportunity to communicate back if you'd like to.
Love the opportunity to do that, show them the videos.
Thank you. I mean, we're gonna do it right now, so you'll be able to see what they have to say. So I'm gonna open up a public hearing, but just remember, this is a quasi judicial hearing, so you would have to be sworn in, okay? Does anybody from the public have anything to say about this particular development? Hey, Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe Huffbauer, 5033 Sharon Drive.
Hold on, Joe, we're gonna swear you in.
If you'll raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm the testimony, the statement you are about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'm really just going to ask questions. I'm not going to really make a statement. I don't think your engineer's here at this point, is he? The one? No. Okay. Yeah, I did look at their design for the drainage, which I was impressed also. I thought it was a good design. But there are a couple of significant contamination areas right adjacent to it. Smile Line is a contaminated site, and then there's also the Florida Power and Light arsenic contamination in the neighbors' wells all around that location. For our own liability reasons, I think it would be important that we get their engineer to look at those two contaminant areas, and that infiltration gallery will not.
Joe, tell me what that is again.
Yeah, I'll give you copies of the report.
Very good, thank you.
There's a Florida Power and Light contamination with arsenic.
Is this to be passed around?
You can pass it around. That's a letter from FDEP that talks about the arsenic, and the other one is the most recent report for Smile Line. I just wanted to make sure that if we're gonna approve it, that we considered those, that the engineer looked at it. I don't believe there will be an impact, but it's more for covering our butt, if nothing
They
else.
did get an FDP report now.
Yeah, but that's just the electronic 10.2 report. Basically, you send it in electronically. Nobody from FDEP actually reviews and talks to you, so that's why I wanted them to make sure they did do that review, just to make sure that we looked into it. But I do like the design.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you.
And this is their Robert, just so you'll know, Joe, Robert Carroll, one of their engineers, is the one who actually conducted the report. And they do talk about not impacting the wetlands or other surface waters. Activities that they're going to be involved in are not going to impact wetlands or surface waters. Drainage facilities will include 24-inch pipes. Remember that they've got that storm system under Building A, the parking lot of Building A, which looked quite adequate. And the report does go on. So they did some analysis.
But not for the groundwater wells that are already impacted.
Good point.
Basically, my concern is that we don't contaminate more wells. You know, I don't think we will, but
They'll take longer, right?
yeah, just
Thank you, Joe.
there
Appreciate
are
it.
some wells.
Go ahead. Yeah, thanks. If you'll pass it over, Jim, please. Thank you. But anybody else, please?
Jeanette Howard, 1123 East Park Street.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the statement you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. I think it's a wonderful project. I don't see why we would deny them. I know it's not, I mean, I know we have history with the La Brisa, but it's not the La Brisa. It's a franchise hotel. It's gonna serve Tyndall Air Force Base. It's gonna be an improvement to Parker. We'd be crazy to say no. Say yes, please.
Jeanette, thank you. Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Anybody else, please?
Pat Posick, 1344 Stratford.
Do you swear from the statement you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Much like Joe, I basically have questions going back to Anchor Engineering. On page 5 of the submittal review comments, about 2/3 down the left-hand column, it says side yard setback 15 feet, approved, 7-foot side setbacks depicted on the site plan. If it's
That's
7
okay.
feet,
Only has to be 7 feet, so they meet the requirement. Side yard is 7 feet, front yard 20 feet off of the property line, yeah.
okay, well then the
And
others don't seem to make sense, because the left column gives the maximums or the minimums, let's say. Building height maximum 60, they approved it 30 feet, 3 3/4 inches. Front yard setback 7 feet, approved, they have a 15-foot front setback depicted on the site plan. So if you follow that logic, side yard setback should be, according to this, 15 feet, approved, 7-foot side setbacks depicted on the site plan.
Let me get to the chart real fast.
It just seems like an error.
It's different for the different developments, and that's a commercial development, so commercial, let me just give them to you,
I
Pat.
think it's a typo when they did the.
Yeah, so their front yard is 15 feet, so they meet the requirement. Their
Yep.
side yard is 7 feet, they meet the requirement. Their rear yard is 15 feet, they meet the requirement, and if they're a corner, which they're not, it would be 10 feet, and they have the opportunity for a 90% impervious area.
Okay, so then the side yard setback that says 15 feet is the error. That should be 7 feet,
Yeah, it should
as
say
far as what
7 feet on
the
that.
requirement is.
The actual survey showed 7.5, so it's a good
Yeah,
catch, but they
Okay.
she's
still,
saying if you look in the blue right,
I'm just saying Anchor made a
if
mistake.
you look in the blue right there, there's a typo in that.
maybe we can get our money back from Anchor.
I
What do you
know,
say?
right? At least $5.
And there's one more.
Go ahead, Pat,
Right.
please.
And again, this one, it's somewhat beside the point, but correct information. Down just a couple of lines, maximum lot coverage 90%, In the first square, it says the lot area is 82,289 square feet. In the next line, it says the lot area is 81,979 square feet. So again, it's inconsistent. I don't know what it is. I did the math. There's still less than 90% regardless of what it is.
Their actual engineer, because Anchor's our engineer, their engineer said 84 and change. And as long as it's under 90, we're okay with it.
Okay, but our engineer then gave us two numbers.
Yeah.
82,289 and 81,979. Which is it?
Well, your point is well taken.
Thank you.
They are a bit lacking in attention to detail.
Thank
And
you.
we've noticed this, we've had complaints going on. I think we're gonna have a joint meeting to address some of those concerns.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
You're good. I was gonna wait on you.
Do I have to?
You're
swear him
good.
in?
Go for it.
Yes, please.
I want to be treated the same.
Because he's an attorney.
It doesn't matter.
Sorry.
Let's get him
Okay.
sworn in.
Do you swear affirm the statements you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. What is your address, sir?
Cameron Fuqua, 621 North 9th Plaza. Three things real quick. First off, I've actually done some work as an attorney for some hotel franchisees up in West Virginia and North Carolina. And I can attest, Choice Hotels and their franchise agreements are ridiculously stringent and very, very particular. So I would never advise ever getting into business with them because it is so stringent, and their inspections and everything else and some of the penalties are insanely strict. And so I don't know if that moves the needle at all, but I wanted to mention kind of my personal experience with that specific hotel group and franchisees. Number two, just wanted to mention as well, similar personal kind of attest to both Robert Carroll and MK Weber. Done a ton of work with them here in the county, and their opinions I weigh very heavily on. So would also urge everybody here, council later on, to put a lot of weight into their opinions, because I think they're both very, very reputable people. And then the third thing, getting hung up on this hotel motel thing is a fascinating academic argument. With that said, I think the statute at the very end says and generally recognized as a motel, and I think it's important to recognize that while La Brisa may very well have been generally recognized as a motel, that would not be the question here. It would be whether or not this particular entity is generally recognized in the community as a motel.
Cameron,
and so
we're
just
aware.
wanted to
Appreciate
add that
that,
to the mix there for y'all.
Thank you.
Yep.
One quick question for him. Is Weber was the engineering firm that looked at the structure? Is that?
No, MK Weber, there was structure, right? And then the civil engineer for the drainage and everything, I'm assuming, was Robert Carroll.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Mr. Patel, then I invite you. Let me go ahead and shut down the public meeting. Mr. Patel, if you would like to go ahead and answer to that. I think Joe brought up the one point about the potential environmental issue there.
Yeah, absolutely. We have nothing but an interest in making sure that the community is protected. We have no interest in any contamination of any water wells. We will make sure with our engineers, if they have not already looked at it, that we ensure that that is reported to, and we'd be happy to report back to the city clerk with any type of update that our engineers provide us. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
I make a motion to recommend development approval for 5711 Business 98 proposed Quality Inn.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Outstanding. Thank you, Jim. Let's take a vote, please.
Ms. Hutto?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Robichaud?
Yes.
Mr. Stryker?
Yes.
Chairman Riga?
Yes. Congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you, and
you all.
nice job. Thanks for all the information.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
But it fell horribly to Mr. Riga's even more superior.
Listen, hey, listen.
Mr. Robichaud, I read that section probably 6 times trying to wrap my head around the detail of the words itself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's like it was written by a lawyer.
It was like it was written by a lawyer, Mr. Slime.
Very good. Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate your time. Build us a nice hotel, okay? Make it.
Discount coupons for the commission, please.
We'll be
All right,
hosting
we're- now-
family
That's a
reunions,
quality
breakfasts. Now you've got a hotel spot. No worries.
Very nice, thank you. Now,
I think he had worked for Comfort Inn.
Thank you very much, sir.
it's our pleasure, sir. Thank you. Build us a nice hotel. Make us proud, okay? Thank you, sir. All right, very good.
I was paying attention.
And then the other thing is, I assume you want me to also, when it gets to the council, include standard recommendations.
Absolutely,
uh,
please.
And standard conditions.
So
Absolutely.
And one of the
come back.
conditions
They will
being
have to
that,
come to council. He'll say to come to council.
that the engineering report, indicates that there's no, groundwater contamination.
Yeah, that's correct. It does not. Do you have a copy of that report? I'll give it to you if you'd
I
like.
do not.
Okay, I'll give it to you.
We'll build the comfort in after we build the quality in.
Just as long as I don't have to sit steak out in front of it, we'll be fine.
Chairman Regan, before we move on to the second item, I've got a couple of additional motions I'd like to make that directly relate to this.
Please.
If you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, we just got wrapped around the axle on the definitions of motels and hotels, and our LDRs don't really help us
Right.
as much as they should, and they certainly don't help contractors and developers with a clear and concise definitions. So I've got two different motions here that propose changing the definitions of hotel and motel in the LDRs to something that is lead pipe consistent with the Florida statutes. And I don't know, you wanna do them one at a time, or I can pass them both out, and we can talk about them one at a time?
Yeah, let's pass them both out.
Okay. I should have stapled them all together. Okay, this is, let's
the
do motel
feedback loop.
first.
Thank you for
That,
doing all this
as
work.
we learn things where it could create problems in our LDR, we make the changes to keep it from problem.
But the LDR is a living document,
Exactly.
therefore, there's things that happen to us now that are,
This is.
that
And we
wouldn't have
learn.
happened just 5 years ago.
Thank you. We learn from it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of things, I mean, having had the hurricane, the paper mill closing down, there's a lot of things that they didn't foresee happening 5, 10, 20 years ago.
Of course, the paper mill's not in our jurisdiction.
No, but it affects us directly as far as, maybe a business coming out here and things of that nature, so I think that's.
Jim, can I hand the rest of these out to
Yeah,
you,
please
our
do.
audience?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Bore them to tears.
There's two different ones there.
Okay, again, these are two motions to make a change to the LDR specifically on the definitions section. Let's take the motel one first. The lines are numbered, so if anybody wants to do any wordsmithing, changes, additions, deletions, that's why it's numbered that way. After I make the motion, I'll open it up for any adjustments that the commission might be wanting to make. Whereas the current definition of motel, tourist court, motor lodge on page 2-19 of the LDR is not consistent with Florida statutes 509-242-1, in that it includes lodging classifications not defined therein, namely tourist court and motor lodge. And whereas the current definition does not align with Florida statutes 509-242B, which defines motel only, and whereas an allowable use distinction between motel and other classifications of public lodging is made in the LDR, and whereas developers need and deserve clear rules in order to properly classify proposed projects, thus avoiding unnecessary expenses and risk of denial for failure to comply. Now therefore, the Parker City Planning Commission recommends to the City Council, City of Parker, as follows. The definition of motel, tourist court, motor lodge on page 2-19 of the LDR is deleted and replaced with the following. Motel, any public establishment which offers rental units with an exit to the outside of each rental unit, daily or weekly rates, off-street parking, for each unit, a central office on the property with specific hours of operation, a bathroom or connecting bathroom for each rental unit, at least 6 rental units, and which is recognized as a motel in the community in which it is situated or by the industry. The primary discrimination characteristics of a motel is unrestricted direct access to individual guest rooms by visitors and guests. That last sentence, the first part of that definition is verbatim out of the Florida statute. That last sentence I added to enforce what we believe is the prime distinction. I hereby place that motion on the floor.
It's not on ours, but
We don't have
the
that
last
last line.
sentence is not on these.
You're kidding.
It was the most important one.
You just kept on and we're looking at our papers.
Oh my goodness. You're right.
Printer, blame it on the printer, Jim.
It's
All
okay.
right, so the only.
Don't blame it on the clerk.
important person, so trust me, the last sentence says the primary discriminating characteristic of motel is unrestricted direct access.
Do you want to make copies of these?
The clerk has the
It
official
will
copy.
be
This is to
an
go to
ordinance
council.
amendment
Yes.
to
Thank
the
you.
Correct, the
LDR,
LDR. Okay.
Can you
along with other
send
changes.
the
There's
planning?
several things.
Yes.
that? Thank you. Can I see what I'm missing here?
That last sentence.
I know my shorthand is like really
Yeah,
scratchy.
that, so it's like, where is that? You know?
Like Dr. Ray.
Do you-
Let me ask you a question about that. Jim, just maybe have to get Mr. Sloan's opinion. So the primary discrimination characteristic of a motel is unrestricted direct street access to individual guest rooms by visitors and guests. If they're locked doors,
Read the first sentence, that's straight out of the,
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to do to clarify it, but if you're going to adopt a statutory definition, I don't know that I would recommend you go beyond
okay,
that.
I would entertain striking that last sentence.
Go back to our original.
Go back to the.
so the ones.
That's
we
why
wanted
the
to
lines
do-
are numbered, so
Only because
Right.
if you're an attorney, you could construe that differently, right? I mean, If you're
And again,
a non-attorney.
this is probably gonna be one of a few changes that the council will be considering to the LDR, because there's some other things that, as we work through the issues in the new LDR, that we need to make some changes to.
Very good. Thank you.
So is that your motion, Mr. Robichaud?
Mine-
To recommend basically
Well,
changing the definition to that statutory definition?
yes, and to affect that, on line 26, strike the sentence beginning with the primary discriminating characteristics and strike all of line 27.
So what we
We
have.
don't have those lines.
Yeah.
All right,
He's
so
striking the part.
does anybody have any questions on the motion?
Let me
as written?
let me absorb it first.
I mean, obviously, the tourist court and motor lodge can be stricken, because I don't think we use that anywhere.
They
But,
even make them on the lines anymore.
This is the whole motion.
But I'm
No,
not
not the
sure.
whole thing's not the motion, just, it's the actual verbiage change is the motion.
Yeah.
The mo- the-
He's just giving
Well,
the
and to delete
reasons up at the
those
top.
two terms also.
Yeah. So the whereas parts are just dealing with the reasons why, and then the last part is the actual
But
motion.
let me also suggest that when you have that last part, which is recognized as a motel in the community and which is situated or by the industry, you're gonna hear the same argument
Yeah.
that you heard tonight, that the industry recognizes what they're proposing as a hotel. And that's what I was saying at the beginning when I said there's gonna need to be some clarification or an establishment by the council of what they believe that definition would include.
And as I mentioned earlier, the difficulty is there really is no authority.
Because you said they pay a
that
fee.
Characterizes,
And that looks
public, accommodations. There are just industry groups.
Yeah.
But that's the way the statute
I
reads.
understand that, I'm
Now,
just,
my intention was to amplify the statute, so I think what I wanna do now is I wanna withdraw that motion, and I'll present it along with the hotel motion at a different time. Well,
Next time?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
because the hotel motion
they're not gonna
contains
be adopted.
amplifying,
immediately anyway.
contains amplifying information as well. So I
Very good.
will withdraw that motion and I'll present it at the next meeting.
Okay, Terry, anything else for the rest of the group? And thank you, Jim, I really appreciate you putting that together.
I think job well done. We can disagree at times and still be approved.
Damn straight, that's why we're, as long as we're respectful, right?
still Mr. Robichaud's thing, the second thing on
That
there.
was it.
Oh, discussion to amend the
Because that's
comprehensive
not-
plan,
Can we put
111,
that
okay,
off
I'm
the
sorry.
show?
I thought that that's what we were just
We'll
doing.
be ready to go home, but we can't go home yet.
Go ahead, Jim.
This is not a, this is a spitball, and I wanna get some ideas. This is not gonna be any, it should be a one pager, there's a paragraph that's struck out on the second page. And the nexus of this is, the difficulty or the adventure we had, with the commercial manufacturing business that is attempting to set up on, the old, First Baptist Church. Now, this does not, has nothing to do with that. What this is a suggestion that an outright no manufacturing mantra perhaps doesn't make the same sense it did back in the 60s and 70s when it was first put on there. And as the prime example that I like to use, I'll give you CB Sales. CB Sales falls under the legal definition of a manufacturer because they manufacture biminis, upholstery, and sales out of cloth, raw material, which that is their raw material. Now, CB Sales is grandfathered in because they've been here forever, but if CB Sales had applied for a development plan today, and if we followed our LDR and comp plan, they would have to be denied. And that makes no sense, because I can't think of a more compatible, more useful thing for a seaside community to have than a sale loft. And that's kind of the spirit of this thing. So what I'm proposing is, we wanted to let manufacturing in wholesale, and we don't want to do that, because that is a universe of some good things, but mostly bad things that we don't want to have. So how do we accommodate these small, desirable manufacturing entities, and still maintain the character of our beautiful little village, right? And what I'm proposing is the ordinary way to do that was, since we in our comp plan and in our LDR say manufacturing is an industrial use, and there are no industrial use districts. So the conventional way to allow manufacturing would be to create industrial use districts and modify the land use map, put these little industrial use districts plots in there, and you'd open it up to manufacturing. I'm saying that's a bad idea.
Yeah,
What I'm proposing is that, and you can read the details here, instead of creating industrial districts, we add a change to the comprehensive plan policy at 1.1.1, which allows what I'm calling limited and temporary industrial privileges. Okay, what these privileges can only be granted by the city council after the applicant showed a compelling evidence that the development would serve a public interest without compromising the quality of life in Parker. These LTIPs would only be granted within existing central general commercial districts. So there wouldn't have to be a change to the land use map, because it would only be allowed in existing commercial districts. Of course, we'd have to add development standards in the LDR to define what these the use and development standards for these LTIPs were. So here's some ideas. Numbered on page, I guess that's page 2. Okay. Number 1, LTIPs would only be created within existing general commercial designated parcels. If it's in a CRA, only general commercial parcels within sub-area 2 or 3 would be so designated. Now that's open for negotiation. We want to eliminate the main street of Parker CRA sub-area 1 and say no, we're not going to allow it in there, but we will allow it in 2 others. Or do we want to limit it to just 1? That's something we need to discuss if we want to do this.
That's a good thought, though, because 2 and 3 could probably accept that, but 1 is
if we want
right
to
here.
maintain that whole
yeah,
Main
exactly.
Street idea, we wouldn't want any kind of manufacturing in
Right.
1. Now, here's where you get into, these are ideas of how do you put boundaries around these manufacturing entities that you want to allow without having to without defining them down to how many rivets and screws they're allowed to use. And one of the things that always comes up is roads. So these LTIPs would have to have direct access to state roads. They couldn't use our city surface roads. Now, we might want to modify that if this particular business only needs a one-axle truck to to get raw materials and do deliveries. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. The important part is number 4. That LTIP designation would attach to both the parcel and the business. It would renew automatically as long as the owner and the nature of the manufacturing or assembly or processing or storage of products, which is the definition of manufacturing, remained unchanged and would require review otherwise. In other words, so if the guy changes to a different product, or if the owner changes,
Has to have new approval.
LTIP is withdrawn, the new guy has to come before the city council and requalify. So here's number 5 is some examples of things that we don't want. I'm sorry, that we do
It would
want.
be limited
We
to-
gotta make it a positive statement, right?
Let me go back to 4, ask
Okay.
Mr. Stone a question here. So this would be defined as a land use district.
No.
Okay, so we would keep the land use districts and then just provide this designation for
It would
a
be
business and
privilege.
address.
Let me, I wanna make this clear because it's important. It is a privilege that attaches to an existing land use district, general commercial only, and only certain general commercial parcels.
Okay.
So we're not gonna create industrial use districts, which means we won't have
Alright.
to change the land use map.
Well, and my concern, Mr. Chair, is that the land development regulations are an objective set of standards by which everybody can look at them and determine whether or not they can develop a parcel. If you put in subjective criteria, and you put in essentially individual parcel grandfathering, now you've changed what an LDR is supposed to be. I understand that we could probably incorporate some of what Mr. Robichaud has done here, but if you give a land use designation and you say you can do X, Y, and Z on that today, as long as you don't change the LDR, the next guy or gal should be able to do X, Y, and Z tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be, well, it's a temporary, it's limited, it goes with the property, it either
But he's going
exists
after
or
a
it
core,
doesn't.
he's going after a core need.
Right.
Because right now, we've identified manufacturing. If you wanna make dowels and birdhouses, you can't right now.
But there's still a
A-
major
and-
difference
and-
between Dallas
And when we think of manufacturing, I think people are thinking of smokestacks, and I think they're thinking of gravel trucks and large industry. But manufacturing encompasses so Jim's he's on the right path. This may not be the final solution. What we gotta do is drill it down so that it makes sense and it's universal cookie cutter for anybody that
And I
wants
obviously
it.
didn't do
But-
enough job of communicating my intent.
I don't know what it
Is
is.
that me? Sorry.
But this would not be a land use district. This would be a privilege that attaches to a land use district that is both limited and temporary.
Well, I understand that you're not creating an industrial land use district, but you could also, in the general commercial, include, just as we've done, a light commercial definition. You could
But that
include
would
a
apply to
definition.
every general commercial parcel.
Well, but again, that way somebody could figure out if they could do something on this parcel and this parcel, and they wouldn't have to come to the council and ask for permission to do that. It needs to be an objective standard.
But they have to come to the council anyway, because what they're manufacturing is the key.
Yeah.
They gotta come to the council anyway.
And
where
I
they
think we
wanna
can
do
build
it
that
is-
in. I
There's
think we can
definitely a
build
need,
that in.
definitely a need for us to revisit the definition of manufacturing and somehow allow it to be utilized in certain areas which are prevented at this time,
that's
because it's too restrictive at this time, and we don't want to be that, guy.
right.
We want to, we want somebody to be able to manufacture
Well,
dolls.
the other thing, the city has a
in a small
60-page industrial user sewer ordinance.
Yeah.
So if they start triggering that ordinance, they've got a lot of compliance, they've got testing to do, they've got things that I think are more of the things you're not wanting to allow in. So one of the exceptions could be that they do not generate industrial sewer.
I
And
believe
that
it-
could prevent the kinds of, plants
way to
you're
skin the
talking
cat.
about.
Mr. Sloan, you're a great straight man. 5A. Manufacturing uses would be limited to A, wet or dry processes whose waste does not require treatment before releasing to the city sanitary sewer system.
Well, not just that, but they can't qualify as an industrial user at all, period. Regardless of whether they pre-treat it or not, if that's gonna be industrial waste, they've got a whole laundry list of things they've gotta do.
Is industrial waste defined in this
Yep.
ordinance?
Not in the LDR, but we have a whole ordinance.
Well, we can
that
refer
defines
to the ordinance as,
Correct.
you cannot produce industrial waste as defined in ordinance. I
Correct.
mean, that's good input. That's really good input.
Might I recommend, this is excellent because it's needed, and that became very evident during our April planning meeting with the roofing manufacturing company, and then the council meeting that happened in early May, because we really do have to drill down further in terms of what is manufacturing and when are we really wishing that it not occur in that particular area or district. Can we go ahead and absorb this and then perhaps come
And-
back with some
Yes, and
some ideas
that's
we
my
can
whole
pitch?
I want you to start thinking about this. These are suggestions and only suggestions.
Okay.
The
No, it gives us a path though, Jim, and I
Yeah,
appreciate that very
and I
much.
want to point out that Mr. Robichaux is generating this because of not because of the particular development that may be coming at some point in time, but it's as I understood it, a potential need that he perceived of the city, irregardless of a particular.
Absolutely.
Exactly. This is nothing to do with history or anything that's happened prior to today. I'm looking forward. Who's the next guy that shows up that's got this great thing that unfortunately is manufactured? It'd be a perfect fit for the city. Boy, we'd love to have it, but I'm sorry you can't.
Well, when we
Yeah.
did the LDR, there were things that would come at us that we had no way of knowing. Like I said, when the hurricane hit, if you look back at what we'll say our forefathers did 15, 20 years ago in the city, they didn't know the paper mill was gonna close. They didn't know we were gonna get hit with a Cat 5 hurricane and the church that used to sit there on the corner wouldn't be there anymore. Or this building down the road would get knocked down where the post office used to stand. They have no way of knowing any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, here we're being approached with different things, and we have no way to know every business that may wanna come
Okay,
out here.
may I offer a suggestion then? Please take this home. I can provide an electronic copy if that would be easier for you to add and subtract. But concentrate on these 5 items here and edit the hell out of it. Add things, remove things. I'm particularly interested in the list of only the number 5 is the only things we will allow. We're not gonna specify birdhouse manufacturing. We're gonna say that whatever you do can't have a process at temperatures above 600 F or pressures above 300 PSIG.
Very good. It gives us a great roadmap, though.
And
so
I would
thank
ask
you.
that we put this on the agenda again at our next meeting.
We will.
In addition to the new definitions.
Please.
So, along this lines, because since this was part of how we could accommodate the proposal that was placed before us, the real concern that I have is that the arguments that were used for the LU change create a precedence that absolutely, if applied, would decimate future planning. And that is the disturbing part of what that proposal was, the Centaurus proposal. The arguments used, I believe that some arguments need to come up that cannot propagate. I am very much concerned about that. And, you know, on your point about, yeah, we
But
don't know.
let
a
me back you
hurricane.
up.
Let me finish, please.
But no, because it's directly related to what you just said. So usually, when a land development or when a district change comes about, it's because somebody owns a piece of property or buys a piece of property and they want to build something on it that they can't in the current designation. How do you, so you're saying let's not have that be the driving factor in terms of why we then would consider changing it. So what would be the driving factor?
Well, first of all, there was a commercial portion that did accommodate the size of the building that he did have. So he actually did not need to do.
Just forget about that development. Come back to what I'm talking about. So usually it's
Well, if a
somebody
person
owns
buys a piece of property that has 3 different things, it doesn't a priori grant him a right to change the land use.
That's why they have to come before us. But what then is the mechanism for determining what land areas, what districts get different district ratings? I mean, what is the, why don't you put together some ideas for the committee in terms of these would be the things that we should consider when we choose to have a land development area changed? Because right now, you're exactly right. We're whipsawed by the process, and the process is somebody owns a parcel of land, somebody wants to build something, it doesn't meet the requirement of the land that they own right now, so they come to us and say, will you change it so that I'm legal? So how do we change the process?
Mr. Stone once upon a time told me something along these very lines, and the fact that it's in the land use is in the comprehensive plan. If an owner, for whatever reason, wants to change the land use map in the comprehensive plan, the burden of proof is on the owner. He must offer compelling evidence of why that change is good for the city.
I'm operating back to what Paul said, though. Paul said that he doesn't want the mechanism for land use changes to be when somebody comes to us and says, change it because.
Oh, I
So,
Well, actually, though,
what you're saying is, we would still maintain that same process. So what should the process be for us to consider a land use change?
well, now I'm glad you brought that up because I have presented to the city council on one occasion a proposal for what is the decision matrix that goes into it. And I don't have all my papers here, but the LDR and the comp plan specifically goes through what are the issues you consider. We did not consider those issues. And the issue that was used to justify was simply, well, this is I own all of it, this is commercial, so by adjacency this becomes. That is a horrible precedent that really undermines any future planning down the way. That's what's scary for me.
Could you resurrect that paperwork and share it with us?
Well, yeah, I don't have it with me.
No,
today.
I don't mean right now. I mean next time we get together.
So what I have proposed is
Because
let me finish.
we do have to do this. This is a good process.
Yeah.
We have to do this, but
I have recommended that we have a joint meeting with the planning commission, with the city council, and the administrative staff, the front staff that are the forefront of the thing. There's a number of issues that need to be cleared up. One of the issues is just what do you say to people when they ask your opinion? Another is the issue of having a.
well,
Please let me finish, Mark.
but I'm a linear thinker. I got to come back to this
I have
land
got
use
to go
thing.
down this path.
So,
Let
but
me finish, please.
okay, we
Okay.
seem to be jumping though.
Well, you're interrupting me. If you let me finish, then you will understand the point. But there's a whole process. The process is that we have talked before about when we make a decision and we have a vote on it, that we have not provided a standardized report to the city council listing the pros and cons and the arguments that were followed. But so that is part A, and the arguments that you have presented, both you and Jamie have said, they can read the minutes, or they can look over at the
Video.
voicings. Okay, now, so I want to formalize how we report, but that report value is only as good as if the city council can trust that the process we use to evaluate these requests was a standardized process. Now, for example, I mean, I'm not calling any names, but whether they're nice people or not has no bearing whatsoever in the process. And all of the other issues that are delineated that we must consider were not considered. So I want to formalize that.
Well,
Bring your
and let me just
paperwork
say,
and share it with
I
us.
believe they were considered, perhaps they weren't espoused, but they were considered because that's your job as a planning commission to consider them. So implicitly, you must have considered them in making your decision.
I said, okay, it's a legal point, but there's another point on all this. I also, I've taken my job really seriously on being on this planning commission because I looked at myself as being a steward of the vacant areas that we have. How do we grow them, maintain the past, and merge into the future, and try to create as much of a harmonious community as possible. In doing that, I actually got a plat from the property appraiser showing all the available land that is still vacant. They're going to do an overlay to the comprehensive plan to sort of see what is in each of these areas, so we know what we're working with. If we're being stewards, we need to know what our assets are, in a sense. And one of the things that I feel is missing is there are some very specific state regulations. If you look at the history of how the comp plans became a part of the city process. When you first formed Parker, you didn't have a comp plan. That became later on. And so each of these things are sort of an evolution to try to make sure that there's an orderly process in ensuring that state regulations are being followed in this whole thing. I would like the attorney to present what our legal obligations are in that process, because I'm not sure everyone is as aware of them as I am. So anyway, that's what I propose. I'd like to have a joint meeting. These are the issues I'd like to discuss, and then we formalize these processes.
I think a joint meeting is easily had, but I want to go to that meeting with a clear agenda in terms of what we're going to present. I don't want to have them,
I will present your agenda. I've done it
being
3
on
times.
so being on the planning commission, it's our role to then make specific recommendations about how that process would change. So why don't you bring that paperwork with us, share it with us, with what you've already done.
I will.
Let's come to consensus, then we'll set a meeting, and then we can go to them and say, we have this heartburn, and the heartburn is, we've got residential, MU1, MU2, general commercial, PBs, et cetera. And we want to make changes based on the following criteria. We don't want to be whipsawed by the process anymore. And I think as long as we all agree that that's what we're going to do, and we develop a process, then we'll set the meeting up with the council members,
fine.
and because
I'll present it next meeting. Sure.
rather than just it being a brainstorming session when we get together with them, because that's our job. It's our job to do that.
My sole objection, Mark, my sole objection to the way things are running has been then when I've requested that we formalize how we report to city council, that has been brushed off. And it has been brushed off. And if we truly are saying that the final decision makers in these things is the city council, then we are basically like the discovery process in a courtroom. We should present that in a format that allows them to quickly distill what we've learned. They shouldn't have to refollow our paths. And that's all I'm trying to do.
Well, so they get a copy of our minutes, right?
Yes, sir, a draft.
And they have access to these films.
Video and recordings.
How else do you want us to?
Oh, don't go there.
No. How else do you want us to give them that information? They have access to the
Mr.
notes.
Bishop, you want to answer that?
I believe there's a state statute that requires that planning commission submit a report along with any motions to the city council. And that report is supposed to take them down the line of this is what we considered, this is why we recommended what we're recommending. Nobody's going to read the minutes on the city council. They're too busy.
Most of the minutes have been useless until this last one.
There has to be a standardized form somewhere. Is there one put out by the state, maybe?
No,
It just says a report.
we can come up with that.
That you don't want to. It's easy to do. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we considered this, this development plan is not consistent with this chapter of the comp plan, this section and this section of the LDR, therefore we recommend it not be approved.
So the paperwork they get looks the same every time?
Well, right now they don't get anything.
They get nothing.
Well, they get
Well,
they usually get a report in the context of the minutes, or perhaps the chairman goes and makes a presentation.
But I would say that the minutes have been very remiss.
I understand your point there, but I would follow on with what Mr. Robichaud said and simply tell you all that there are two different things going on. When you deal with land use changes, that's one aspect, which is a legislative aspect. Then you deal with development permit applications. That's more of a quasi judicial. That's where you've got, by statute, as Mr. Robichaud points out, that's where the council has to actually generate a list of the reasons that a denial or limited denial would be given. There was a change in the law a few years ago that requires that in the event that the council does choose to deny or partially deny a development permit. So they would have to generate that list at their level. I think what you're suggesting is you give them something that'll help them with that process.
Absolutely.
And
if it's not that, it's just to understand what we were thinking.
And I think that plus the minutes, they should be reading the minutes. I mean, they get them, so they should read them. But those two things would be beneficial, and I think if you all are in favor of that, then maybe Mr. Robichaud could come up with a format.
It's I did it for a motion that I did not place on the floor, and it was basically it was one page, line by reference by reference as to why each of the parts of the motion said what it said, and it was basically so anybody who didn't, well, how did they come up with this? Oh, that's what it says.
I vote Mr. Robichaud's our report writer.
I think
sounds like a Cliff Notes
I would encourage every member of the council, if you're going to make a motion, that you make an effort, and you know it in advance what you're going to do. You make an effort to write it down beforehand, and you can always edit it at the thing. But making a verbal motion, we had an example of a double negative not too long ago. What are we voting on again?
How did all that work, and then when
But
it came down to making the motion?
If we are going to do this with this report thing, the fact that we meet every month puts a lot of time between things happening. So then, would it be necessary for us to, if there was a report that needed to be considered, for us to have another meeting to actually go over that? Because that's gonna get given over to the city council, but we're not going to be able to be back together to correct that. An email thing is kind of,
Can't email.
Well, let's have that meeting where we talk about just what we just talked about, the process by which we analyze and then how we then communicate our decisions, both the pro and the con. They should be aware of both sides of the argument, because as I said, think of ours as a discovery process where we look at all the regulations and then we present it to them in a manner where they can decide where they want to drill down further. Okay.
Good deal.
So I have a question
yes,
though,
please.
real quick, and this might be something Mr. Sloan would answer for us. There's been some comment, of course I run the resident page, about Fulcrum, and when they submitted their project thing to us and said this is what we're gonna do, and we're gonna have fences, and none of that has happened. And I know we have code enforcement, but what else do we use that to hold their feet to the fire to make them do what they said they would do? Because I think they were bought out fairly quickly from when they were approved to come in down there. And I mean,
Well, they
okie
had
dokie, have a business,
they had the
but
conditions imposed on their development permit. So if they're not following those conditions, then there are a couple of things, three things you could do. One, you could not issue them a certificate of occupancy, or in other words, allow them to conclude their development.
Oh.
Two, you could give them a stop work order if they were still in the process of working. Three, actually there's more than three now that I think about it. Three, you could enjoin them from doing whatever it is that they are not supposed to be doing. 4, you could cite them through code enforcement.
I just feel like this is kind of maybe bigger than code enforcement, just because they told us they were gonna do this and that, and they've got kind of a partial on this, and the fence that's around there is not even, and the landscaping is kinda and
So sometimes you all may want to consider, and there's a statutory provision for this, is a development agreement, and that agreement you have to publicize it, and do certain things about it, but that agreement can be used to say they're going to do this, this, and this, and if they don't, then you can put in the remedies, what the remedies would be.
Could that be a
Parker-
bond?
Well, typically, you know, if you're doing a subdivision, you would have a bond.
Okay.
Depending on the kind of development, you may or may not have a bond if it's not a subdivision, but there are ways you can deal with that. We've not traditionally used development agreements, but representing other cities, I've used it.
You know, the specific case here is their development plan stated they were gonna build drive-through sheds where they're gonna store lumber. They didn't build those sheds, they're storing lumber on the ground. It's a laydown yard.
Well, remember, this didn't come necessarily in the formal context the way it should have. It came initially as a temporary building, you know, with them. And you all were asked to consider it in a short order, fairly quickly, because they were in a hurry to get going. And notwithstanding the fact that I suggested that it come in a normal process, it came differently. So
We got what we deserved.
Well, I think Bev's concept is right, though. They gave us an order, and they actually identified exactly what the structures were gonna look like, and we didn't end up with that. So what are the consequences to them is the real question, and how do we impose them?
Well, like I say, the conditions, if those were a condition of the development permit, then you have all 4 options. If they were not, and if we didn't get a development agreement, which we didn't because of the timeliness of it, then you may be more limited in your remedies. But that's not to say you don't have a remedy.
Right.
It's just, it depends on what they've done.
I think what bothers me is just like he said, it looks like a laydown yard. It's like I put it, it looks like Godzilla ate Home Depot and threw up out there.
But isn't there a time limit where they have to complete their development order?
I think it's
before they get
2 years.
Yeah, they got an occupancy order after that.
So
If you haven't issued that yet.
Well, they obviously have an occupancy order, they're in business.
last
Yeah,
February.
and that's where we interface with EPCI, and EPCI should be doing regular inspections to ensure that what is permitted is
done.
what is being built.
Right.
Right.
And we haven't had those?
Well, apparently
I don't
not.
know.
The should being the operative term, Mr. Palmer.
Then we need to go to EPCI then.
So that's the feedback loop. That's what I was looking for. That's what you're asking for too, where we make these plans.
You told us you were gonna do this. If you don't do this, now what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's a good point. Jamie, anything from you?
No.
I know we've got a couple of council members coming up for, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
Commissioners coming up for
I emailed,
readmission.
did you get your email, Mr. Palmer and Mr. Stryker?
Yes.
Yes, I emailed them both and I've emailed the applications.
When do they have
Excellent,
to
very
be in
good.
by?
June.
Oh.
I think. June 1st is when council would like them by.
Okay.
Reappointment in July.
Bev, Terry,
Are you
anything
using
more
the
from you?
form that, the last
Then
form
I
gave you?
emailed the new forms, yes, sir.
Can you email me one?
You emailed it to me.
I didn't know if you changed it or not.
No,
Oh,
I didn't
If you
change
didn't,
it.
I'll use that one.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Robichaud, anything more from you?
No. What's our next meeting? Is it second Tuesday?
When is our next meeting?
It would be June 13th.
I'm gonna be out of town June 13th. So, a couple of options. We could either push it off, or Paul is our vice chair. He could
I could do
stand in. Okay, so we'll have the meeting on the
Well,
third.
but if the next meeting, we're supposed to talk about any of the stuff that Mr. Robichaux had,
Mhm.
technically it should be all of us. I mean, if it was just a meeting to approve something for the city, then, you know, I mean, we probably could do our thing there, but
Yeah.
as far as.
We can take care of whatever is business is before us. with
Yeah,
that.
you don't,
Well-
a quorum is three or more.
Yep, yep, that's right. Okay, so we'll keep the meeting on the 13th, and then maybe you could share with me your thoughts on how to
Absolutely.
change the land changes.
I will send you the stuff that I've already written on it, as far as, because I've done, I first submitted the original paperwork back in August of last year.
Okay.
So-
And, Mr. Sloan, we're not violating any sunshine laws if he's
If he's
emails it to
simply
me?
disseminating it for informational purposes and you all do not have any dialogue about it, then he can do that. It'd be better, Mr. Palmer, if
Send
you
it to
send it to
Jamie.
the clerk
And have
and
her.
let
Okay, I'll do
the
that.
clerk
Oh,
distribute
do
it.
that, and then
Yeah.
she'll send it to all of us.
Okay.
Perfect, thanks, okay. All right, good deal.
All right.
Good deal.
Hit the
Thank you.
hammer.
So I am gonna be gone on the 13th. Thank you, everybody, appreciate everybody's attention.